this amazing group of women that lift me up. And actually it was Kim Rabago that gave me this quote. And I never had heard of her. And she goes, oh, have you ever heard of Brene Brown? I'm like, and I listened to TED Talk, and that actually changed my life. So the journey of self-development really helped me, and it gave me the courage to write the book. So my book is a memoir about my life, the journey through fashion, tenacity, resilience, my childhood, and everything I did to get where I am. A lot of tricky ups and downs, and those were the stories I told for 50 years. And now book 2 is already in the works, and now it's going to be, where are they at? The next chapter. So the next chapter, and yeah, that's the book. So it's been an amazing journey, and just like Helen and Jess, the amazing support. And I never thought, when I wrote the book, that I never thought that my story would resonate or anyone would care. I just did it for therapy. And as I've traveled throughout the country and internationally at this point, it resonates with so many people. So that's kind of the journey with the book. That's it.
So that's Jill Strickland. She wrote Behind the Button. It's a very wonderful book. Next, we're going to introduce Michelle McInnis. Next, we're going to introduce Trina Stutzman, who wrote 12 Steps to Overcoming People Pleasers. Welcome, Trina.
Thank you. I'm going to hold my baby.
Shameless self-promotion. I like it.
This is my 5th baby. I have 4 children, and I consider this to be my 5th baby. And right now I'm on maternity leave. I'm tired. No. My story of my book started 20 years ago when I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And when you have your throat, for lack of better words, cut open twice, you think about your voice, and you think about maybe this dis-ease in your throat, your thyroid. And so this book is about finding your voice, and over those 20 years, I worked on finding my voice. And so Story Studio, as Karen mentioned, was 3 years ago, 2019. And that first meeting, or one of the first meetings, Jill walked in and she said, I'm going to write a book. And I was like, oh, I kind of want to write a book too. But she kind of said it with such exuberance that it really connected with me. And I actually was a little jealous of Jill for saying that. And then Michelle next to me came out with a book, I think a year later. When did your book come out?
2020.
2020. And I was like, ooh, I'm jealous. I want to write a book. And I always tell clients, I'm a life coach, that jealousy is a map. And if you're jealous of someone, there might be something in that for you. And so when my 4th baby was graduating from college, I decided it would be a good time to have another baby, because we miss those babies as they go off. So this is my story, and also some tips in here about how you can find your voice. And I guess the biggest surprise in writing it is that I thought I had overcome people pleasing until I write a book. And then I wanted to please people in writing the book. And I had to think about all those people that I was writing about, and I had to think if I was making them happy. But I had to let that go. And so this is a book of courage for me. And if I said it in the book, I can say anything now, right? I don't have to be afraid of saying anything. So that's my story. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Trina, very much. Trina leads Story Studio along with Kristen Myers here. It's a very amazing experience just to start the journey of writing. It was for me that basic. So next I would like to introduce Michelle McInnis, who wrote Be Your Own Emotional Alchemist. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. It's funny because when I started thinking about what I wanted to talk about with everybody was I really feel like the gray hairs came in as I was creating the book. Like you said, it is a labor of love. And to hear your voice over and over as you're reading it over and over, and your mind's kind of going out of its head, and you have to step away from it for a bit of time so that you can decompress. Because it gets to the point when you're creating a book like mine is more of a self-help. I was a social worker for many years, and so my own private practice, I found that clients needed techniques to do when they weren't with me, right? They were always like, texting me like I'm not really sure what to do and how to handle this, so I broke it apart about different emotions. Like if you're angry, this is a step for you. If you're sad, this is a step for you. So it came from my heart for all of my clients out there that I've worked through over the years that wanted something to take home with them. And that's really where it was birthed at. So, but I agree. It's funny because mine came out in 2020, like Thanksgiving 2020. And so there was no like contacting bookstore. There was nothing. There was just like nothing in it. Excitement-wise, I think the question you guys have that last, like, how did you feel holding it? And I felt great, but I didn't feel like there was ever any like this celebration for it all. So that makes sense. So I appreciate you guys letting me come here and celebrate it 2 years later. That's great. So yeah. So I don't even know if I've answered your question, but it is a labor of love. And yes, there's grammatical errors. There's always grammatical errors. Doesn't matter how many times you have your person go through it. There's always grammatical errors, but there's a lot of grammatical errors in mine. So I apologize to anybody who it really. If you're a Virgo, my book's going to drive you nuts. So I'm just going to tell you that right now. So anyway, so that's kind of my journey. So thank you.
We are all perfect as are our books, just as we are. Thank you, Michelle. So next I get to introduce Sandi Backlund. Yes. Sandi is Shauna's mom. Shauna has been with Sisters U since day one. And Sandi is going to tell us her journey, her current journey.
My book is so totally different from the other authors here. It is a romantic fiction.
Oh.
And I'm not a writer, never thought I would be, never had the kind of thing where I wanted to be a writer. There was nothing there. In January of last year, for whatever reason, I had a dream or I had a vision of some sort, and I quick wrote down 17 pages of what I would think a book, romantic fiction, would be. Where they came from, what kind of families they had, that whole nonsense. So went through it all, found a former classmate of mine from North Penn High School, and she is a published author, but her genre is so far removed from romantic fiction that she and I, our brains could not get together with this, but she gave me the kind of go ahead and do this, just write what you know. So coming from a very eclectic, wonderful, imperfect Italian family, I had a lot to draw on to get this through this. And I am the proud grandmother, Nana, of 8 of the most adorable grandchildren on this earth. 3 wonderful children and 3 in-law children who tolerate my crazy family. So, and my friends. And I drew from all of the experiences, things that we have done, and I put it in the book, and I wanted to make it not funny, but made people smile at some of the things that these 2 characters got into, and their friends. And it's only like 127 pages, but right now it's at Washington getting hopefully copyrighted. And as soon as I get my certificate, I can be at the knee of these authors and ask them how they did all the publishing part, who they talked to, and where they went to. So, if you're not a rom-com kind of book fan, movie person, you're not going to enjoy this.
So I am.
You are. But if you are, I think you're going to enjoy it. And again, if you come from a very traditional Italian family like I did, you'll get it. You'll understand it. You'll understand it. So thank you, and I hope again to sit at your knees and see where you went with the publishing part. So thank you.
Thank you, Sandi. That was amazing. And next I get to introduce Tammy Babinchak, who wrote Your Time Is Now, Finding Your Passion and Courage to Pursue It. Welcome, Tammy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, I am just honored to be here. I have to say that first and foremost, it is just an honor. And I resonate with so many different aspects of each of your stories, really from the doubt, the self-doubt that creeps in, right? To finding your voice, to all of the roller coaster of emotions that I think we all go through when you're called to something, right? There's really something about writing a book, because it's not for everyone, but when you're called to it, it's answering a voice that comes from a different place inside of you. And that was my exact experience. I lived a life one time, and frankly, I still live this life, which is another important part of my story that is slowly unfolding. But I lived a life at one point in time where I was what I consider to be, I was unconscious. I was, caught up in the day-to-day, right? I was worried about many things. I was busy. I was scheduled and overscheduled. I was traveling the world. I worked for Merck, and I'm a pharmacist actually by degree. I have a specialty degree in infectious diseases, so a lot of my work has been in research in HIV and hepatitis C. And so I was traveling the world, I was meeting tons of people, I was attending these meetings, and I was living life. People would say, wow, you're so lucky, you have this incredible life, you get to travel, whatever. And then I had my husband, Michael, who's here with me tonight, my daughter Anna, and my son Michael. And they're my world, right? So what everyone saw was me traveling the world, but what they didn't see was those mornings when I was up at 4 a.m., right, leaving to kiss my little baby boy goodnight and making sure that I had enough breast milk in the freezer so that he could have something to eat and that it wasn't me, and would he latch when I came back, and my Anna who was right. So it's funny because we create for ourselves really the stories in our minds, what we want our lives to be, what we think our lives are about. But in reality, there's something else usually, right? That beneath all of the things that the world calls us to that was calling me to, right? That I thought I was doing it. I was having to live this life to prove to everyone that I was someone. If you read my book, you'll understand why I had so much to prove. I'll save that part for you to read. But know that there was this point in time where something clicked. And I was getting on a plane, and I was actually headed to London. I was going through this, so I knew it was a long flight. And long overnight flights for me were always not something I enjoyed, because I had to wake up as soon as I landed. I would usually get off the plane and I'd have to go right to the meeting, right? And or get to my room, freshen up, and go right to an 8-hour meeting. And so I remember getting on the plane, and I sat down in my seat, and I was in first class. It was pretty fabulous. You laid back. I got a little glass of champagne. I had a whole routine. I was doing it up. And something just clicked. And I heard a voice that said, what are you doing? What are you doing? Is this really what you want to be doing? And I was like, oh, I don't like that voice. Yeah, well, yes, I have to keep doing this, right? I am a mother. This is my job. I've worked my entire life to own this career. Yes, you're going to keep doing this. And I did that for a long time. I ignored that voice, and I kept pushing it away, pushing it away, pushing it away, because I had everything to prove. And then finally, you'll also read about this in my book if you choose to read it. Throughout my life, I've had a number of experiences that I didn't really want to really know about and understand. I was a devout Catholic growing up, so the idea of spiritual experiences happening to you is not something you really want to talk about, right? Most of the time, Catholics aren't really into experiences. Well, for me, I had no choice but to pay attention to some of the things that began to happen to me. And they came from, they were delivered to me in ways that were really beautiful, and I could no longer ignore. And what I heard was, listen to the voice. Listen to the voice, but also being able to take action in hearing that voice, just like we did. And you do that when you're afraid, because I'll tell you, when I wrote this book, and all of you said the same thing, right? We did this not because we have it figured out, not because I wasn't afraid. In fact, I'm still afraid. I'm terrified of all the things I'm doing right now, right? But when you find your voice, it connects you to something else. It connects you to something bigger than you. And that thing that's bigger than you, all of a sudden, takes over. And it's what I practice radical surrender. It's radical surrender to the voice, your true voice, the voice of your heart, your purpose, why you're here. And the roadmap that I talk about, the roadmap to finding your passion and the courage to pursue it, the roadmap is here. You already have it. It's already there. It's just a matter of finding it and having the courage to act on it. And that's what I did. And that's my journey to my book. And it's been a wild ride. it's been a wild ride. I'm not gonna lie to you. It hasn't been easy. It wasn't all like rainbows and unicorns and, I mean, no way. It was Thanksgiving when I actually finished my manuscript. I spent the days before it like huddled up in my room. I was writing at 3 and 4 in the morning, and saying things, right? But this is what I mean when I say that voice that calls to you, when you answer it, it delivers. Everything changes, and I think we're all represented in that. So once again, thank you for having me here.
Thank you very much. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to Shauna, who's going to ask questions. And when she asks you the questions, if you don't mind, again, standing in this space, obviously you don't need to. It's fine. Perfectly fine. And then we'll open it up to Q&A. We'll have a little break, then we'll open up to Q&A, right? Okay. All right, thank you, Shauna.
No problem. All right, so we'll start. We'll go around like we did before. So Jill, what is the one thing you learned or are learning about yourself during this experience?
Oh, it's tough.
You guys stand up.
I'm not a listener, can you tell? That's what I wrote. I'm not a listener. Wow, that's a lot. Definitely I resonate with Tammy in the way that finding your voice, putting it out there was terrifying, because I had hid that and had the wall, and she's perfect and she has the money and the husband and the 2 kids and the business, and she must be fabulous, but nobody knows the stuff that you hide, and you have that curated life on social media, but no one sees behind that smile what's really going on. And then your world crashes and you realize you've got a story to tell. I cry every time. You have a story to tell. And then what was really amazing is I started telling my story to different people in my store, especially when you're in a fitting room, you feel vulnerable or they feel vulnerable, and you have that trust with them. And as you're talking to them and telling them your truth, and then they tell you their truth, you realize I thought I would get judgment or condemnation or for letting that out. And what I realized was I was not alone. And my byline of my book is the stories that thread us together. And they really do. And when I told my story, these women that I've known for 15, 20 years who, just come in and buy a blue shirt from me, told me, I hear you, my son, my daughter, my niece. And I'm like, oh my God, I never knew this about you, and here we are. And now we have this connection that we didn't have before. So I never experienced that. And like Trina said, letting that out. And then what was crazy was you put that out in the world, and it does make you fearless because that's out there. All the messy stuff is out there. And it does make you fearless because you're like, if I did that, if I wrote a book and I put all my messy, icky stuff out there and someone read it, well then, I can do anything because it's all out there. So that was a big surprise. And then really weird. By the way, this is really weird. I don't know if you all have experienced this, but I've been at a lot of book signings and a lot of podcasts, actually in the country and internationally. So that's been a crazy experience. And you start to tell a story. And someone goes, I know. Someone you've never met. I know. It's in the book. And I'm like, oh my God, that's so weird. That's so weird. And I was like, maybe this is what Kim Kardashian feels. I'm like, so I'm like, oh, this is so weird. So that's been a surprise. But then it's interesting, as I've been on multiple podcasts and signings and everything I've done, this crazy things I've done that I never thought I would do, especially being dyslexic. So I never thought I'd write a book, much less it's all here, as you can clearly see, and it's all here. and I crazy ADD, and to put it down on paper was a huge accomplishment. And then when I said this before, but when I wrote the book, I didn't think anyone would care. Like, who wants to read about my life? Like, whatever. And again, I said like that I really did for therapy for me, and it's really cathartic. And you said you want to write a book. Everybody's got one book in them. They say that. Book 2 is going to be challenging. It was very cathartic just to get that out and to get it out. So that was, I lost my train of thought, to just get it out into the world. And I totally forgot what I was going to say. But what was surprising? Oh, I know. That it resonated with so many people. When I went on these podcasts, they said, we get it, I read your book, it's amazing, your story, your, all that stuff. And I didn't think anyone would care. But so many women have resonated with my story, and that's empowering and amazing. And then that is my passion, always has been at Frax, is to help women, make them feel great about themselves, accept their bodies the way they are, and give them the confidence to fake it till they make it, and to give them the power of clothing that makes you feel great, and then you can not worry about your clothing and go help communities and do all these things. But now I am in the service of others as well, on the new platform. So yeah, that's kind of it.
Thank you, Jill.
Yeah.
It's all good. Michelle, what was your process for writing the book? How did you get started?
So what I found was that I personally I didn't realize this till later in life, I still like markers. And so I literally had to, I talked to another author, and they had suggested doing storybooks, I'd color them to kind of give the chapters to get a feel, and then I would add the words or the ideas within it all. And I'm giving this all out to you because everyone's got a book within them, right? Self-publishing, it's easy. You can do it yourself now. Your voice is always needed. Like, don't think that just because, I'm so-and-so, I can't write. I'm not a writer. It's not a natural thing for me. It was a very difficult thing for me. I really did it for my clients. I didn't necessarily do it for myself because it was a painful process for me, just because I'm not naturally fluent that way with writing. But finding my own creative way to do it, which was really cool, was doing storyboards. So I did it in the little postcards, and then eventually I got it up on those big Post-it notes, and I'd slap them up in my office and would start to play with them. And then it finally started to formulate within that. And then obviously working with an editor really helped me to hone in on the things like, a little long here. Okay. So that helps. What was the question?
Get out here, you're like, did I answer the question? I'm not really
You
sure.
should have just let them all go. What was your process?
Yes. So I think that was my process.
Trina, you
We
ready?
must be women in our midlife. What are we talking about?
Mom, you fit right in. I know. All right, Trina, what was your biggest challenge you faced when deciding to write your book?
Well, the biggest challenge was, I like this quote by Toni Morrison. She says, if there's a book that you want to read and it hasn't been written yet, you must write it. So I felt it was kind of a calling to write the book that I would want to read. So I wrote a book that I would want to read. As I said, I'm a recovering people pleaser, so the 12 steps goes along with the recovery movement. So there's stories in there of my own personal life and how it relates to the step. Somebody asked how long I have been writing the book, and I'd say I have been writing it since I had thyroid cancer. So the challenging part was to try to, I knew that it was on my computer, I knew that it was in my journals, it was drawing it out and deciding what to put into each chapter. I mean, you mentioned the storybooks, I didn't do that, but I wrote my book in kind of a magazine format style. As people pleasers, we don't have a lot of time to read. I don't know about you, but I often finish a lot of the books that I read because I'm so, overgiving and overworking, and so I chunked it. And I think the challenging part then, once to gather it all and put it into that format, was then to decide to be done, knowing when to be done with the book. Kathy Heller, I think her name is a coach, and she just says, put out, see, work. Like if you wait till you get an A, put out A work, you'll never get the book published. So I consider this to be C work. You know, and just took the challenge to be done. And what was really challenging for me as a people pleaser is having our own thoughts and feelings, because we don't always know what we think and what we feel. And so my tendency was wanting to do a lot of research. And my publisher said, don't research. Like, your story is your story, and you know what you want to say. And I think that was really helpful, because it would have been challenging, because I wouldn't have known where to stop and end the process. So yeah, C work. Wait for my A work.
Yeah.
The next book will be B work. Next book will be A. All right, Sandi.
Yes.
Who was your biggest supporter? It was me. Don't worry.
No. In fact, I didn't even tell most of the family that I was writing a book. I mean, it's a sappy romantic fiction, so, you know.
We're never going to read it.
It's at the time, a 68-year-old person, what do they want to write about a romance novel? So, anyway, yeah, I did. The supporters actually came from our house at the shore. I have had two neighbors who I've known for 18 years, and just recently, just 2 years ago, when we were talking, and I said something about, well, yeah, I have to remember to tape this Hallmark movie or whatever it was that I wanted to tape, and my friend on this side of me said, oh my gosh, you're a Hallmark fan? And I went, anything that is a romantic fiction, be it a mystery, mostly comedy, I want something in there that you can smile about. And she said, oh my gosh, do you know this person and this author and this actor or whatever? We started talking. So when I told them that I was going to write this sappy romantic fiction, I asked them to be my readers, my editors, and to go through and give me their suggestions. And same with the person on my right. And they both came in with grammatical changes, with when you write a book, you're supposed to not do double spacing between the sentences. Now you're supposed to do single spacing. Yes. And who knew that? I mean, I took business courses all my life, but they never said anything about that. So they came in and they said, Sandi, I think you should have her do this. Or when she's with her friend, maybe she should say that. And did this really happen to you in real life? Yeah, it did. Oh my God, this is so funny. And so they were my supporters because, again, I didn't want to tell my family too much about it. And I really didn't want to have all my friends that I've known for 50 plus years get into it. So these two people, while they were my neighbors and my friends for 18 years, they really were not that close to me. So I could get true feedback from them telling me, Sandi, you want to do this, or you want to expand that, or you want to do this. So they were my biggest supporters, my two neighbors. So there you go.
And Tammy, what was it like the first moment you held your book?
Oh, that's a good one.
This book for me, I wrote this book, but I will say to you that I also feel like I channeled this book. It was a book that I wrote, I still refer back to for myself. It's like a book I wrote for me, almost. My higher self speaking to the Tammy that existed at the time is what I mean by that. And so it was terrifying to actually then read it, you know, because it was like I was reading the truth that I needed to hear. And I realized that many women would need to hear. And that's also terrifying, because then you are shoving your story, your life, your truth out into the world.
Exactly.
And you yourself are still integrating that truth. I was still integrating the truth into my reality, into my world. And so it's exciting, terrifying, thrilling, all the things that make us human, all at once. And everyone deserves to feel that. You know, so really, if you're sitting here, right, and thinking, my God, I need to write a book, yes, you do.
Do it.
If you are already thinking that or have thought it, it's true. That's the voice. But we have this other thing that tells us to know all the things, right?
Yeah.
All the things.
Yeah.
So do it. but I know
Don't
all those
do
things
it.
are all for all of us. Like, it's just, It's been an incredible experience, and it's something that, you know, I'm sorry, I can't remember her name, Michelle, but she had said, right, like when my book was published around the same time, it was 2020, we're in the middle of this pandemic, and I have to say, at that time I was kind of like, okay, you know, this kind of stinks, because now what? But when I reflect on that, it was actually kind of perfect, because I needed that time, I think, to come to terms with this whole new thing that I was about to really go do, and I wasn't ready.
Because we're all running around like crazy.
Yes.
All of a sudden, I feel God pushed
Yep.
the pause button.
Yep.
And we all, because this book, like yours, would have never happened had I not been sitting home with my store closed.
Amazing.
And same as you.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Absolutely right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was all those things.
COVID babies.
What's that?
COVID babies.
That's what I'm saying, I'm like, there's five COVID moms.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We're all different and all have different stories, yet very similar experience. Don't you find? I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I just want to say thank you again to all of you. And I know that for so many of us, we're at all different stages in writing. And so I just want to take this time to invite any of you who are interested to Story Studio, which is a virtual studio to write. You can share or not share, but it's been life-changing for so many of us. And especially for someone like me, and maybe there's more of me that's out there, where we are so focused on our service and what we do and, you know, the day-to-day, that we don't stop. And Kristen and Trina do a wonderful job of helping you just frame out a moment and just talk about that moment. And it's been, did you say 3 years now? This is hilarious, but when we first started, I had no idea what to say or do. So Steph got me this little book that you filled in the blanks of one word. Like, I like to blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, I can do this. Then I moved on to, someone said, well, you really like to spend time with your granddaughter, so why don't you write about that? So that was, well, I like to play with her, and I like to, like, it was a list. But 3 years later, I get the prompts, and my pen cannot move fast enough.
Yeah.
And I read it, and typically cry, it's a thing. And then it's in, like, wow, I didn't know I felt that way. That's so interesting. And it's so empowering. And to your point, Tammy, your truth just starts to come out. And it's an amazing experience. I invite all of you. It's the first Wednesday of every month on Zoom, 7 to 8, in and out. And it's just such an amazing experience. So if you're interested, let us know. Penny's a part of it. Kristen, there's a lot of us. You can come in and out. It's an hour. So it's wonderful. So I invite all of you.